report conducted with my co-authors and I, Alan Stevenson. So initially this started off as a project with a group of students and supervisors from Aarhus University, including me, and later experts like Saurabh Bhattacharya from Bell Labs and Engling Day from Carnegie Mellon University got really interested into the project and joined, and we did later more analysis and collected bigger data sets as well. So today I'm going to talk about smart devices and sensing. So we have smartphones, and smartwatches today have a wide range of sensors, for example, accelerometers, gyroscopes, Bluetooth, etc. And all these sensors allow us to do certain activity recognition applications, such as activity tracking, fitness tracking, transportation mode detection. However, there's one popular sensor within activity recognition that's used widely more than the others. That is the accelerometer. This is one of the earliest and most ubiquitous sensors that was embedded into smartphones. And it's also, for many applications, the most popular sensor. And it also has a low energy consumption and also one of the most ubiquitous sensors, as it works in both indoor and outdoor environments and etc. So this paper and also this presentation is mainly focused on accelerometers, but many of the results I'm going to present is also extendable to, for example, gyroscope. We also report some limited results on gyroscopes in the paper as well. So to build an activity recognition application, you often, in general, build your application to consist of certain stages. And these stages constitute what is called also activity recognition chains. So how does that work? You have these smart devices. They have the sensor. So this could, for example, be the accelerometer here. This provides you with some raw data. And this raw data you can then later pre-process, for example, to remove gravity or to focus only on one orientation, etc. And later you do some segmentation of these raw data into certain segments of certain size. That's various methods to do that. And then you take these segments and you do some feature extraction. And again, you have different kind of techniques to do that. And for each of these feature extractions, you'll then train your classifier to make predictions of classes. And then when you have the application, you will also use the same classifier to predict new classes, or predict the same classes with new data. Okay, so now we have trained a human activity recognition application. So what happens when we give new phone models or new device instances? Well, we're going to extend it. So we have new unseen smartphones or smartwatches we haven't seen before. And these all have accelerometer sensors, but these accelerometer sensors have certain characteristics that's going to influence the raw data, how it looks like, and I'll present that later. And these characteristics are going to change how the pre-processing, segmentation, feature extraction, and finally how the classification looks like. It's going to impact throughout the entire stage of the chain. And impact the class prediction and the performance of the activity recognition finally. So this study was started because we had, in our experience, we have lower recognition performance for activity recognition applications in the wild when we have seen in previous research papers, especially when you have support a mix of different device manufacturers and also different phone models or device multitasking situations. And the problem is only increasing because right now we have more than 24,000 distinct Android phone models. And these phone models each introduce a wide range of heterogeneous sensors. Even though they're from the same kind of sensor, for example, accelerometer, they are still providing you certain characteristics that makes it difficult to do, or more difficult to do sensing. So what I'm going to present today, and also the paper presents, is a systematic investigation of how these sensor heterogeneities vary across phones and models. Then we will assess the impact based on a case study. How much impact does these sensor heterogeneities have on activity recognition performances? Lastly, I'll investigate or show how we have investigated two methods to mitigate the impact of these sensor heterogeneities to make sure that the performance doesn't go too much down, or even you can avoid training with all phone models that there are, so you can save time for your data collection, also for training your classifier. So first, I'm going to report on some of the heterogeneities in the smart device-based sensing and I'm going to focus on the accelerometer. So we're going to investigate 3 different types of sensor heterogeneity. The first one is sensor bias. So sensor bias is the, to say it lightly, is the deviation from the expected reported values you get and the values you actually get. So for example, for acceleration, when you have your phone laying still on the table, you only expect to get 1 g, which is the standard gravity. But in our experiments, we've seen that even for the same phone model here, the LG Nexus 4, we get values from 9.0 meter per square second up until almost 10.5 meters per square second. So that's a huge range of values you get from the same phone model. And it's also, you can see the variance of within the phone model, but across device instances of the values is also changing. The distribution is not even. So that was the first sensor bias. I'm going to go into that later. The next, 2 next sensor biases are regarding the sampling rate. So we are also investigating sampling rate instability and also sampling rate heterogeneity to give a sense of the intuition about how these, what these heterogeneities are about. We have made a small setup of some smartphones on top of a washing machine, which provides you with a relatively stable acceleration as it goes around with the clothes. And then we have 2 devices up here, the HTC Desire and the LG Nexus 4. And we have here we have the timestamps in milliseconds between the samples. And then we have samples from each of the 3 axes, the X, Y, and Z. And we can see we have periods where we have no sampling. And even afterwards, we also have periods of burst of samplings arriving. So that's when I'm talking about sampling rate instability. What we actually want to have is the quite stable sampling rate or difference in time between sample rates, and we don't have that here or here. So that's the sampling rate instability, and it gets even worse when your phone is multitasking. I'm going to go back to that later. We also talk about sampling rate heterogeneity. So we can see that this picture or this figure up here is more coarse-grained, has a more coarse-grained signal compared to the LG Nexus 4. And that's because it has a higher sampling rate. So to investigate this, we have made a small experiment with 38 devices laying on a flat floor to measure the sensor bias. These devices consist of various models from different years of release. The device collected accelerometer samples for a minute in each orientation. And also we have a highly accurate standalone inertial measurement unit to detect any unwanted forces to make sure it was not unwanted forces we were measuring here. So here we have the experiment in some pictures. So we have the phones laying here. We have the inertial measurement unit here. And to test in different orientations, we had a low practical solution where we had mounted the device into a box and turned that around. So it's mostly real-world scenarios. It's not a lab study we're doing here on the sensor biases. So, sensor bias. Accelerometer models differ in precision, resolution, and range, but also in various biases. So, as I told you before. We have the initial calibration is done by chip manufacturers before they're mounted onto to the smartphone, and it's often cheap sensors in the phones or smartwatches, because that's not the primary function of the phone or watch to do sensing. And also the packaging introduces misalignments when you're putting the sensor into the phone, which results in offsets in the 3 different axes. So before I show you a picture of one model, so here's the picture of all the models. And we can see also within some of the other models we have as well, the picture is also different across devices, even within the same model. And we can see we have wide span of measurements across all the devices. So it's really a tough job here to take this into account. So that was the sensor bias. Sampling rate heterogeneity is the next I'm going to move to. So here's the overview of all the models in a regular box plot, where we have the star notes the average, and then we have the median in the box plots here. And we can see, again, we have a variant picture of how the different phone models perform. But we need to introduce some vocabulary to talk about sampling rate heterogeneity. So to talk about sampling rate heterogeneity, we also have to talk about timestamps. And we are considering two different timestamps modes often used in activity recognition. So one of them is the creation time. That's the timestamp that the operating system or device driver attached to the sensor measurement. So that's when this sensor discovers that this sample happens, basically. And then we have the arrival time. That's when the measurement is received and timestamped by the application code. Ideally, this should be close to 0. But there's a small delay between the recording on the device driver and it's delivered to the application in the smartphone. And that gets even worse when the phone is multitasking. Also, the timestamp, creation timestamp is only guaranteed to be monotonic. It's hard to use that to synchronize with other devices or other sensors as well. So that's why you need to have the arrival time where you can use an external timestamping, for example, network time protocol or the like, to make sure you can synchronize across different devices. So if you go back to the picture again, and we focus on some of the models, we can see here. So we have the Samsung Galaxy X Plus. We have for example, the median is lower than the average. So this suggests we have there exist not only many, but some long time spent outliers. We can also see the outliers here is also varying across the phone for the model, both in creation time and arrival time. We can also see the same picture in the HTC Desire and HTC Nexus 1. And we can also see the standard deviations up here. We can see that there's a higher standard deviation in general for the arrival time than the creation time. So if we move to some of the other models, we get a better picture. We have a better, more stable sampling, but we still have the arrival time is still a bad indicator of for having a stable sampling frequency. Yeah. I also talk about multitasking. So the sampling rate and stability get worse. To investigate this, we have used a CPU profiling or benchmarking application that will make sure that it's going to use all the resources available on the smartphone or the smartwatch. We used it on 2 phones while they were sampling accelerometer measurements. And we can see here for the LG Nexus 4, actually we saw almost half the sampling rate, and when the smartphone was doing nothing but sampling. So we've gone down from 200 Hz to around 110 Hz. But we also have high outliers of a second in the arrival time, and then we have some low outliers when we have sudden burst of measurements arriving when the sampling application or the smart device has less high CPU tasks to do. And we see a sort of the same varying picture here for the Samsung Galaxy S Plus. So to conclude on the heterogeneities, to sum up here, we have biases that deviated often up to 8% from the true gravity compared to the 1G. We have some severe instabilities occurring on many investigated devices. These results presented here are mostly from the smartphone's accelerometer, but the results also generalized to gyroscope as well. So we have some figures in the paper here, for example, for the gyroscope, still showing that we have some issues with unstable sampling rates. So that was the sampling rate, the sensor heterogeneities. But how would you evaluate that? How would you evaluate the impact of that on human activity recognition applications? We did it by looking at the performance on such an application by leaving out some data from certain phone models in various scenarios, and then we compare the performances in baseline evaluations compared to these new kind of evaluations. So I'll present results from that now. So I'll present results from the impacts of heterogeneities on human activity recognition. To do so, we had a case study where we have 6 common activities. We have 9 test users within a short age range to make sure that the user variance didn't play a big role here. And also they were carrying 8 smartphones in a hip-mounted pouch at this, where all the 8 smartphones were sensing at the same time. So we didn't have to make the test subjects repeat the experiments 8 times, which will introduce some variance in performing the activities. We are only interested in looking in the heterogeneities within the experiment. And they're also carrying 2 smartwatch models on their arm as well. So to look into this, we know the accelerometer heterogeneities impact all stages of an activity recognition chain, but the effect is most significant on the feature extraction chain. So here we focus on 3 common feature types within activity recognition. That's the time domain features, such as the mean, the variance of values, etc. We also look at the frequency domain features, which is based on the fast Fourier transformation. You will look at, for example, the spectral coefficients and dominating frequencies, etc. These are common manual feature types. We also look into an automatic learn feature, which is the empirical distribution function, or CDF for short. And we employ a sliding window of 2 seconds and 50% overlap. That's a common technique to do in this kind of scenario. We evaluate the impact by using a weighted average of F1 scores. That's the harmonic mean of the precision and the recall. We use 4 common classifiers: the decision tree, supported vector machine, k-new neighbor, and random forest. They are common within activity recognition to use. And then we compare scores of baseline evaluations that are commonly used within activity recognition, with some evaluations we are proposing that emulate real-world performances in the wild. So the baseline modes are the random 10-fold stratified cross-validation, where you take the data and split it into 10 evenly randomly distributed folds. And the other evaluation is leave one user out, where you only train with all users but one, and then you use the last user as a test data, and you do that for all the users, and you average across all the folds. So the real-world performances we are emulating is when we have one model that's new to our data set. So we use a leave one model out evaluation, where we train with all but one model, and then we use that model for testing. We also using a one model evaluation, where we train with only one model and leave the rest for testing. And we do the same also if one model leave one user out, where we train with only one model and leave one of the users out of the training set, and then we test with the rest of the models and the rest of the users. So the one model is to emulate where you only train or collect data with one phone model, and that's common within the activity recognition publications, that you only consider one phone model. And the one model leave one user out is an extension of the one model, which is comparable to the leave one user out. So we also have some users that's previously unseen to a data set. So what we get is a very picture. So here's the overview of the impact. We can see the 3 different feature types here, and we can see the 4 classifiers for each of these 3 feature types. So now I'll go through each feature type individually and report the results from those. So I'll first focus on the frequency feature type. So here we have the 10-fold cross-validation, where we randomly distribute the data into 10 folds, which compared to the other evaluation modes provides us with overly optimistic results. We can see, for example, the leave one user out has significantly lower results, where we train with all but one user and use that user for testing. Whereas also the leave one model out has either lower or comparable results to the leave one user out. So this suggests that the frequency features are impacted by the heterogeneities within phone models. So that's often that's the sampling frequency here that's going to impact the sampling frequency instability. That's going to impact the results. You also see if we train with only one model, that's a poor indicator of the performance of the activity recognition application, as this has lower results than all the others. And in general, our frequency features, or the frequency features, are the most impacted features by the heterogeneities. So if we move on to the time features, the picture gets a little bit better. Again, we have overly optimistic values from 10-fold cross-validation. We see now that the leave one model out is not much impacted compared to leave one user out across all the learners, but we still see that the one model is, especially for the decision tree, has low or comparable results to leave one user out, or even for some of the other learners, it has lower results than the leave one user out. So this still suggests that the time domain features as well are impacted by the heterogeneities. So the ECDF features, here the pictures are generally better. We have higher accuracies generally than the 2 other feature types. We can still see that there's an overly optimistic picture from 10-fold cross-validation. And we see the leave one user out has accuracies that's varying across the learners, but also that it has, in most cases, leave one user out is lower than the leave one model out, where we sometimes get close to a 10-fold cross-validation. So here the heterogeneities within cross-phone models is not impacting the features as much. but we still see that the one model training is still lower or close to the leave one use out. So to sum up for the heterogeneous impact on human activity recognition, we can see across all of our features and machine learning algorithms, we get for tenfold cross-validation, we get an average F1 score of 91%. When we have the leave one use out cross-validation, again, across all phone types and all features and all machine learning algorithms, we get 66.7. But as soon as you go into the one model leave one use out, which is comparable to leave one use out, but we only train with one model, we get a drop of more than 10 percentage points in the F1 score. We see that the breakdowns are most significant for the frequency domain features, especially when the phone is multitasking heavily. So I haven't presented these results, but it's in the paper, and the results are even worse than those I presented here. We also see that the most impacted learning algorithm is decision tree, and then the SVN and K-nearest neighbor has some low results, but they are generally capable of handling these changes better. And we can also see that the random forest is in general the best classifier for this kind of task. Our results also extend to smartwatches. Now, I've only reported on the smartphones, and also gyroscope data and feature combinations. I haven't reported on those, but they are in the paper. So now I'll present some of the results when we've been investigated 2 methods to mitigate these effects on activity recognition performances. So the 2 methods are a clustering-based approach, where we cluster the devices accordingly to the sensor heterogeneities. And the other mitigation method is where we reconstruct the signals by down or upsampling using interpolation. That's quite common to do when you have difference in sampling frequencies. So clustering. So we cluster based on heterogeneities. So we use 2 values for a feature vector. That's the median sensor bias and the standard deviation of time between measurements. And the idea is here that we want to avoid training with each phone model, as there's more than 20,000 if you want to support all the Android models. And so we do that by having one representative within each cluster as part of the training data, and then we evaluate with we only evaluate with those devices that's within the cluster. So to zoom in, so that's all of our 38 devices we have in our static heterogeneity experiment, and the bold labels are the devices we've been using for this kind of for the performance evaluation. And we get the following results. So this is an overview of all the feature types and the learners. I will focus on the frequency features as they are the most impacted feature types. So we can see again the leave one use out is the green one here, where we train with all but one user. Then we have the intra-cluster leave one use out. So here we only train and evaluate with devices within the cluster. So we train with one device from the cluster and evaluate with the rest. And we leave one use out as well. And we can see that its results here are generally the same or higher, or close to the leave one use out. So even if we have less data for training, we are capable of producing the same results as the leave one use out. Also, if we leave one cluster out of the training, if we train across all the cluster types, but we leave one out, we can see that the results are generally significantly lower than the rest of the evaluation mode. So this suggests that we have a good approach here. We have results but also for gyroscope here and smart watches in the paper, but I haven't gone into detail on those. So this is a good alternative to train with all phones. It achieves nearly or higher results than the baseline evaluation. It will require less data to be collected, so you save time in data collection and model training as well. So lastly, interpolation. That's a common method to do when you have a difference in sampling sampling frequency. And we can see here that for the frequency features, in general we get higher results when we have interpolation. That's expected because the frequency relies on sampling frequency features relies on sampling frequency. Whereas for the time domain features, only few of the instances get higher results, and some of them actually get worse results when we're using interpolation. For the ECF features, we get lower results using interpolation. And we have more details in the paper about why we choose 25 Hz as a target frequency, and also why we choose those interpolation methods. So to conclude, I've shown how heterogeneities across phone models vary. I'll show you some pictures about the sensor bias when the phone is laying still. and they were deviating more than 8% from the 1G that we expect. I've shown you how the sampling frequency also varies across phone devices and also the sampling instability. I've shown you how this impacts the human activity recognition performance, especially for the frequency domain features, which were heavily impacted. But also still some of the other field types still showed that they got lower scores when they have heterogeneities within the test data. And I proposed, we showed one mitigation method, namely the clustering-based approach, that achieved nearly better results than the baseline evaluations. The baseline evaluation leave one-use out. And it requires less time to consume, less time consuming data, and also for training new models. The dataset has been made publicly available, so other researchers can also look into other stages in the activity recognition chain and see how it performs or propose new techniques. And thank you for your time and attention. That was all.